Chapter 8 of Frigid Fracas by Mack Reynolds. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Dale Grothman. When Major Joe Mauser entered the swank Agora bar, the little afternoon dance band broke into a few bars of the tune which was beginning to pall him. I knew her heart was breaking, and to my heart in anguish pressed the girl I left behind me. Nadine looked up from the little table she occupied and caught the wry expression on his face, and laughed. "What price glory?" she said. He took the chair across from her and chuckled ruefully. "All right," he said. "I surrender. However, if you think a theme song is bad, you'll be relieved at some of the other ideas my, publicity agent had, which I turned down." She said, "Oh, did he want you to dash into some burning building and save some old lady's canary or something?" "Not exactly. However, he had a nightclub singer with a list of 9 or 10 victories behind her." "Victories?" "Husbands. And I was to be seen escorting the singer around the nightclub circuit." "A fate worse than death? But truly, why did you turn him down?" "I wanted to spend time with you." She made a mow. "So as to carry on our never-ending argument over the value of status?" "No." Her eyes dropped, and there was a slight frown on her forehead. Joe interpreted it to mean she took exception to one of the middle caste speaking to her in this wise. He said flatly, "At least the tune is somewhat applicable tonight." She looked up quickly, having immediately caught the meaning of his words. "Oh, Joe, you haven't taken another commission?" "Why not? I'm a mercenary by trade, Nadine." He was vaguely irritated by her tone. "But you admittedly made a small fortune on the last fracas. You were one of the very few investors in the whole country who expected vacuum tube transport to boom rather than go bankrupt." He didn't bother to tell her that already the greater part of his small fortune had been siphoned off in Fred Soligen's campaign to make him a celebrity. He said instead, "The stock shares I'll make aren't particularly important, Nadine. But Stonewall Cogswell has pledged that if I'll fly for him in the Carbonaceous Fuel United Miners Fracas, he'll press my ambition for promotion." She said, her voice low, "Promotion in rank or caste, Joe?" "You know the answer to that." "But, Joe, to risk your life, Joe, for such a silly thing." He said softly, "Such a silly thing as attaining to a position which will enable me to court openly the girl I love?" She flushed, looked into his face quickly. Her flush deepened, and her eyes went to her folded hands on the table. He said nothing. Nadine said finally, her voice so low as almost not to be heard, "Perhaps I would be willing to marry a man of middle caste." He was taken with surprise, but even in thrilling to the meaning of her words, his head was shaking in negation. Nadine Hare, category medicine, rank doctor, mid-upper, married to Major Joseph Mauser, category military, mid-middle. Don't be ridiculous, Nadine. It would be as though back in the 20th century you would have married a Negro or an Oriental. She was stirred with anger. "There is no law preventing marriage between castes." Nor was there law in most states against marrying between races, but there were few who dared, and, of those, few who were allowed to be happy. It's no go, Nadine. Remember in the exclusive room the other night, when the waiter questioned my presence in an upper establishment, and you had to tell him I was your guest? I don't desire to be your guest for the rest of my life, Nadine." Anger welled higher in her. "And do you think that in the remote case you do jump your caste to upper, that I would marry you and then realize the rest of my life that our marriage was only possible due to your participation in mass slaughter for the sake of slobbering multitudes of telefans?" Joe said, I wasn't going to bring up the matter until I had made low upper caste. Well, sir, the matter is up. I reject you in advance. Oh, Joe, if you have to persist in this status-hungry ambition of yours, drop the category military and get into something else. You have enough of a fortune to branch into various fields where your abilities would lead to advancement. Again, he didn't tell her that his fortune was all but dissipated. Instead, he said bitterly, "Those who have get. The rich get richer, the poor get poorer. Things are rigged these days so that it's impossible to work your way to the top, except in military and religion. Uppers take care of their own, and at the same time make every effort to keep us of the lower orders from joining their sacred circle. I might make it in the military, Nadine, but my chances in another field are so remote as to be laughable." She stood and looked down at him emptily. "No," she said, "don't get up. I'm leaving, Major Mauser." He began to rise, to protest, but she said, her voice curt, "I have seen only one fracas on telly in my entire life, and was so repelled that I vowed never to watch again. However, I'm going to make an exception. I am going to follow this one, and if, as a result of your actions, even a single person meets death, I wish never to see you again. Do I make myself completely clear, Major Mauser?" End of chapter 8. Recording by Dale Grothman.